The sound of a plastic tray crashing echoed through Preston Academy's cafeteria like thunder. Chocolate milk spread across the pristine linoleum floor in a dark, spreading stain. "Look at her crawl!" Brock Westfield's voice boomed across the space, carrying over the hushed conversations of 200 students. "The charity case thinks she belongs here." Harper Sullivan knelt on the cold floor, her slender fingers gathering scattered textbooks, while chocolate milk dripped steadily from her dark hair onto the pages of her physics notebook. 5 boys circled her like sharks, scenting blood in the water. All varsity athletes, all legacy students whose surnames adorned buildings across campus, all completely untouchable. "My dad pays more in donations than your entire scholarship," Brock sneered, his white lacrosse jersey pristine despite the chaos around him. Behind him, 4 teammates laughed with the casual cruelty of those who'd never faced a consequence in their lives. Before we continue with Harper's story, I want to take a moment to say something important. If you've ever been in her position, surrounded, humiliated, feeling powerless, you're not alone. These stories matter because they show that even in our darkest moments, strength can emerge from the most unexpected places. If this resonates with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences create a community where others realize they're not fighting alone. And if you want to support more stories like this one, there's a thanks button right beneath this video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps us share these powerful messages of courage and justice. Now let's see what Harper Sullivan is really made of. Harper's hands didn't shake as she collected her torn physics textbook, its pages now stained brown with chocolate milk. Her breathing remained steady, controlled in a way that seemed almost unnatural for a 17-year-old girl being publicly humiliated. She was counting, her lips moving silently. 10, 9, 8. "What's that, Mouse?" Brock grabbed her wrist with the confidence of someone who'd done this countless times before, yanking her roughly to her feet. His grip was tight enough to leave marks, the kind that would purple by tomorrow. "You threatening us? The scholarship girl thinks she's tough." Harper looked up, meeting his ice-blue eyes for the first time since she'd arrived at Preston Academy 3 weeks ago. Something in her gaze made his trademark smirk falter, just for a heartbeat. It wasn't fear he saw there. It wasn't even anger. It was something far more unsettling. Calculation. 7 seconds, she said quietly, her voice carrying an odd calmness that silenced the nearby tables. "That's how long the cameras turn off during shift change. We have 3 seconds left." The words hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Josh Manning, the wrestler standing to Brock's right, shifted uncomfortably. Diego Reeves, all 6'3" of football muscle, glanced up at the security cameras mounted in the corners. They were all thinking the same thing. How did she know that? In exactly 22 minutes, everything about Preston Academy would change forever. But first, they had to understand who Harper Sullivan really was. The cafeteria of Preston Academy looked like something from an architectural magazine. Soaring ceilings with exposed wooden beams, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured lawns that cost more to maintain than most people's yearly salaries. This wasn't just a school. It was a $65,000 per year pipeline to the Ivy League, where the children of senators and CEOs learned to rule the world before they could legally vote. Harper had been here exactly 3 weeks, long enough to map every exit, memorize every camera angle, and identify the real power structure that ran beneath the polished surface. She'd introduced herself as a scholarship student from Newark, daughter of a single father who worked in security consulting. The admissions committee had been impressed by her perfect GPA and what they called exceptional potential. They had no idea How exceptional? The bruises hidden beneath her long sleeves weren't from clumsiness. They were from 4 hours of training every morning before school. The kind of training that turned bodies into weapons and minds into tactical computers. Brock Westfield ruled Preston Academy the way his father ruled the board of directors, through a combination of old money, new cruelty, and the kind of connections that made problems disappear. His crew was carefully chosen. Josh Manning, whose father owned the largest construction firm in Connecticut. Diego Reeves, son of a pharmaceutical executive. Nate Caldwell, whose family's banking empire stretched back 5 generations. And Aiden Park, heir to a tech fortune built on government contracts. Together, they were untouchable. Or so they believed. 3 weeks of watching you eat alone, Brock continued, his audience growing as more students turned to watch the show. 3 weeks of that pathetic brown bag lunch. What's Daddy packing for you today? Food stamps? The laughter rippled outward like a stone thrown in still water. Harper's expression didn't change, but her left hand moved almost imperceptibly to her pocket, fingers brushing against something metallic. She'd documented everything since arriving. Every slur, every shove in the hallway, every mysteriously lost assignment that reappeared with failing grades. 6 students had transferred out of Preston in the past 2 years. 3 had attempted suicide. 1 had succeeded. The faculty knew. The administration knew. Everyone knew. And nobody did anything because the Westfield name was carved into the cornerstone of the main building, and money talked louder than children's screams. You know what your problem is? Josh stepped closer, his wrestler's build blocking out the light from the windows. You don't know your place. This isn't some public school where everyone gets a trophy. This is Preston. We have standards. He reached out and knocked her remaining books from the table, watching them scatter across the wet floor with satisfaction. Harper didn't move to pick them up this time. Instead, she pulled out her phone, not the latest iPhone that everyone else carried, but something different. The case was matte black, military grade, with corners reinforced by carbon fiber. Harper tapped the screen twice, and it came to life with an interface none of them recognized. This wasn't a normal smartphone. It was an encrypted device designed for field operatives, with capabilities that would make the NSA jealous. Every word spoken within 20 feet was being recorded in crystal clear quality, tagged with biometric voice identification and timestamp authentication that would hold up in federal court. The video feed from its concealed cameras captured everything in low-light enhanced detail, uploading simultaneously to servers that Brock's father's IT department couldn't even dream of accessing. This was the kind of technology that intelligence agencies use to document war crimes. Today, it was documenting something smaller but no less significant: the systematic destruction of young lives by those who believed their wealth made them invincible. Interesting device, Nate observed, the only one smart enough to recognize that something was off. That's not exactly standard issue for scholarship kids. Harper's fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency, and for a moment, her sleeve rode up just enough to reveal the edge of a scar that looked suspiciously like a defensive knife wound. She pulled the fabric down quickly, but Diego had seen it. The football player's eyes narrowed. There was more to this girl than the thrift store clothes and quiet demeanor suggested. Phase 1 initiated. Document everything, she typed quickly, the message disappearing into encrypted channels the moment she hit send. The response came back almost instantly. Copy. Teams standing by. Brock snatched at the phone, but Harper moved it just out of reach with a fluidity that spoke of training. Not the kind of self-defense class suburban moms took at the local gym, but something harder, more practical. Something that left scars. What kind of game are you playing? Brock's voice had lost some of its casual arrogance. The girl should have been crying by now. They always cried. It was part of the natural order at Preston. The weak submitted to the strong. The poor deferred to the rich. And scholarship students understood that their presence here was a privilege that could be revoked at any moment. But Harper Sullivan wasn't following the script. The cafeteria staff bustled around them, deliberately blind to what was happening. They'd learned long ago that intervention meant unemployment. The lunch lady who'd tried to protect a freshman last year had found herself escorted off campus within hours, her final paycheck accompanied by a non-disclosure agreement thick enough to use as a weapon. The security guard by the door kept his eyes fixed on his phone, scrolling through something that was apparently more important than the 5-on-1 confrontation happening 30 feet away. "No game," Harper said simply, tucking the phone back into her pocket. "Just documenting a pattern of harassment that violates Title IX regulations and creates a hostile educational environment. Your third assault on a scholarship student this semester, I believe. The previous two transferred rather than pursue legal action. I'm not transferring." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Several students had started recording on their phones, the modern instinct to document everything overwhelming their learned helplessness. "Legal action?" Aiden laughed, but it sounded forced. "My dad's law firm would eat whatever strip mall lawyer you could afford for breakfast. You have no idea who you're messing with." Harper's smile was small and didn't reach her eyes. Funny thing about federal prosecutors, they don't usually work out of strip malls, and they're very interested in patterns of systematic harassment that force students to abandon their education, especially when those patterns correlate with significant donations from the perpetrators' families. The silence that followed was deafening. Brock's face had turned an interesting shade of red, the kind that usually preceded violence. His father had taught him that there were two types of people in the world, those who mattered and those who didn't. Harper Sullivan was definitely in the second category, which meant she could be destroyed without consequence. He'd done it before. The Rodriguez kid, who'd dared to date the girl Brock wanted, had found his car vandalized, his college recommendations mysteriously lost, and his family's restaurant facing surprise health inspections until they'd packed up and left town. The Asian girl who'd beaten Josh for valedictorian had discovered intimate photos she'd never taken circulating online until her parents pulled her out of school in shame. This was how Preston Academy maintained its standards. "You're done here," Broca said flatly. "By Monday, you'll be begging to transfer. I'll make sure of it." He pulled out his own phone, fingers flying across the screen. Within seconds, Harper's face appeared in a group chat titled Preston Royalty, accompanied by a message that made her stomach turn. "New project, make her life hell. Bonus points for creativity." The responses came flooding in immediately. Someone suggested planting drugs in her locker. Another proposed creating deepfake pornography. A junior offered to seduce her and record it secretly. The casual cruelty was breathtaking in its scope. These weren't troubled kids acting out. They were calculating predators who'd been taught that their actions had no consequences, that money could clean up any mess, that people like Harper existed solely as entertainment for people like them. But Harper had been expecting this. It was, in fact, exactly what she'd been hoping for. Every message in that group chat was being intercepted and archived by technology that made their encrypted messaging app look like a child's toy. Every threat was evidence. Every conspiracy was another count in what would eventually be a federal indictment. She just needed them to escalate. They always escalated. "You seem stressed," Harper observed mildly. "Is it because you're realizing that your usual tactics aren't working? Or because you're starting to understand that you've already lost?" She stood slowly, chocolate milk still dripping from her hair, and began walking toward the exit. The circle of boys parted unconsciously. something in her movement suggesting that trying to stop her would be unwise. "Where do you think you're going?" Diego called after her. Harper paused at the door, turning back with an expression that would haunt Brock's dreams for years to come. It wasn't anger or fear or even defiance. It was pity. "To change clothes," she said simply, "and to make a phone call. You have about 20 minutes to enjoy feeling powerful. I suggest you make the most of it." As she walked down the empty hallway, her footsteps echoing off the polished marble floors, Harper pulled out her phone again. This time, she didn't text. She called. The voice that answered was professional, clipped, and absolutely unsurprised to hear from her. "Agent Chen," the woman said. "I assume we're moving to Phase 2? "Affirmative," Harper replied, her scared demeanor falling away like a discarded mask. They took the bait. Full escalation pattern initiated. They're planning everything from drug planting to sexual assault. It's all documented. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "How many victims have you identified?" 12 confirmed so far. 3.2 million in hush money traced through shell companies. The Westfield family is at the center, but it goes all the way up to the Board of Trustees. This is bigger than we thought. Agent Sarah Chen of the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division allowed herself a small smile. They'd been building this case for 2 years, ever since a senator's son had committed suicide after being brutally hazed at Preston Academy. The official story was depression. The truth was a systematic campaign of torture designed to drive out anyone who didn't fit the school's profile. "Maintain cover for now," Chen instructed. "We need them to implicate the adults. Can you handle another few hours?" Harper touched the scar on her arm absently, remembering the knife fight in Tel Aviv that had earned it. Compared to actual terrorists, entitled prep school boys were barely a warm-up. "I've had worse Tuesday afternoons," she said dryly. 20 minutes later, Harper emerged from the bathroom in fresh clothes, her hair still damp but clean. The hallway was eerily quiet, that particular silence that preceded storms. She knew they were waiting for her. Brock Westfield didn't handle humiliation well, and she'd just challenged his entire worldview in front of 200 witnesses. The question wasn't if he would retaliate, but how. She found them in the East Corridor, the one without cameras, a deliberate blind spot that had witnessed more accidents than any other location in Preston Academy. 5 boys, spread out to block any escape route. Brock stood in the center, his lacrosse stick in hand, tapping it against his palm in a rhythm that suggested barely controlled violence. "You made a mistake," he said softly, and somehow that was more menacing than shouting. "Nobody talks to me like that. Nobody threatens my family. Do you have any idea what my father could do to yours with one phone call?" Harper set down her laptop bag carefully, the device inside worth more than most cars. The screen was still open, displaying what looked like a legal research platform, the kind major law firms used to build cases. The interface showed dozens of tabs: Title IX violations, RICO statutes, interstate commerce fraud, conspiracy charges. Each tab contained meticulously organized evidence going back 2 years. "Your father," Harper said calmly, "is currently in a board meeting discussing the quarterly financials. In about 15 minutes, he's going to be interrupted by federal agents with a warrant for his arrest. The charges include wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to deprive citizens of their civil rights. The security fraud alone carries a 20-year maximum sentence." The blood drained from Brock's face. "You're lying." Harper pulled out her phone again, angling it so he could see the screen. A live feed showed the Preston Academy boardroom from an angle that suggested someone inside was streaming it. 12 men in expensive suits sat around a mahogany table, discussing numbers that represented human misery converted into profit margins. Your father's about to learn that bribing school officials to cover up crimes is itself a crime, especially when those crimes drive children to suicide. You're not really a student, Josh said, the pieces finally clicking together. You're a cop. Harper laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. I'm 17. I really am a student, but my father isn't exactly in private security. He trains tactical response teams for international agencies. He started teaching me Krav Maga when I was 7, right after my mother was killed by a drunk driver. Funny how tragedy shapes us. Diego moved first, perhaps thinking her revelation made her vulnerable. His football tackle would have demolished a normal teenager. But Harper wasn't normal. She shifted her weight minutely, redirecting his momentum into the wall with a technique that looked effortless but had taken years to master. Diego hit the plaster hard enough to leave a dent, sliding down with a groan. That's assault, Nate said, backing away. We all saw it. She attacked him. Harper's smile was sharp as a blade. Actually, the hidden camera I placed in this corridor yesterday shows him charging at me. Self-defense is legal in all 50 states. But please, keep talking. The audio quality is excellent. Aiden and Josh exchanged glances, finally understanding they'd walked into a trap. Every word, every threat, every admission of past crimes was being recorded and transmitted. They started backing away, but Brock grabbed Josh's arm. She's one girl, he snarled. There are 5 of us. She can't fight all of us. I don't have to, Harper said simply. I just have to survive for another 8 minutes until backup arrives. But if you really want to do this. She shifted into a combat stance that would have been immediately recognizable to anyone with military training. Feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced, hands raised but relaxed. It was a position that could transition into wari defense or defense in a heartbeat. Brock swung his lacrosse stick at her head, a blow that could have been fatal. Harper ducked under it, her hand snapping up to strike a specific point on his throat with surgical precision. It wasn't a punch or a chop, but something far more sophisticated. A targeted strike to the carotid sinus that triggered an immediate vasovagal response. Brock's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed like his strings had been cut. The remaining 3 boys stood frozen, staring at their leader sprawled unconscious on the floor. Harper hadn't even broken a sweat. Israeli Defense Forces Protocol 7, she explained conversationally. Non-lethal neutralization technique. He'll wake up in about 30 seconds with a headache and hopefully some sense knocked into him. You could have killed him, Aiden whispered. Harper's expression hardened. I could have. Just like you almost killed Marcus Rodriguez when you ran him off the road for dating someone Brock wanted. Just like you destroyed Amy Chen's future with those deepfakes. The difference is, I have restraint and training, and most importantly, I have accountability. The sound of sirens grew louder, and through the window they could see black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. Not local police, federal agents. Dozens of them. This is insane, Josh said. All this for some bullying? Some bullying? Harper's voice could have frozen helium. 12 students driven out of school. $3.2 million in hush money. 2 suicides. 1 murder staged as an accident. Yeah, the FBI tends to take that seriously. As Brock stirred on the floor, groaning, more footsteps echoed down the hallway. Agent Chen appeared first, her FBI badge gleaming, followed by a full tactical team. Behind them came Principal Morrison and Vice Principal Westfield, both in handcuffs. Harper? Chen said formally. Are you injured? Harper shook her head. 5 attackers, 1 neutralized with defensive techniques, 4 witnesses to attempted assault with a deadly weapon. She gestured to the lacrosse stick on the floor. All documented. The next hour was controlled chaos. Federal agents swept through Preston Academy like an avenging army, seizing computers, files, and records going back a decade. Parents arrived in their luxury cars, only to be turned away or arrested. The news vans showed up within minutes, drawn by the irresistible story of elite corruption exposed by a teenage girl. Brock Westfield was arrested on charges of assault, conspiracy, and racketeering. The last charge was usually reserved for organized crime, but as the FBI explained to the cameras, Preston Academy had essentially been running a criminal enterprise that extorted money from families in exchange for covering up systematic abuse. The fact that they wore blazers instead of leather jackets didn't make it any less criminal. By sunset, 37 people had been arrested, including half the board of trustees, 3 administrators, and numerous parents who'd participated in the cover-ups. The school's assets were frozen pending investigation. Preston Academy, the institution that had produced senators and CEOs for over a century, was finished. Harper stood in the empty cafeteria where it had all started, her handler beside her. The chocolate milk stains had been cleaned up, but the memory remained. "You did good work," Chen said. "Textbook operation. Though next time, maybe wait for backup before taking on 5 attackers." "Where's the fun in that?" Harper replied, allowing herself a small smile. Chen handed her a folder. "Your next assignment, if you're interested." Harper opened it, scanning the contents. Another elite school. Another web of corruption. Another group of untouchable kids who needed to learn that money couldn't buy immunity from justice. Dalton Prep, she read. Sexual assault cover-ups dating back 20 years. Budget of, holy cow, that's a lot of zeros. Chen nodded grimly. Someone died there last week. Officially, a suicide. Unofficially. She didn't need to finish. Harper had seen this pattern too many times. As they walked toward the exit, Harper's phone buzzed with a news alert. Preston Academy scandal expands. Federal investigation uncovers nationwide network of elite school corruption. She smiled grimly. 1 down, too many to go. "Ready for Dalton?" Chen asked as they climbed into the SUV. Harper was already studying the file. Another elite school. Another web of corruption. "Give me 3 weeks. I'll have them gift-wrapped." She paused, then added the words that would become her signature. "Guess the charity case has another donation to collect."